Hello, everybody. It's Max with Crypto Talk Now. On our live show, it has been brought up numerous times that, Max, can you look more into burns? Does Jasmy have burns? You talk more about the tokenomics. So, you know what? I decided to look more into it. And if anything, that is what this video outline is going to have for you guys. So let's go ahead and jump right into all of it. So as you can see right here, this actually comes from a Russian site. I know it sounds crazy, but the thing is this, the guy did a good job explaining this in detail. At least I thought so. So some of the translation is a slightly garbled, but look what it says right here. And this is from trade-buy-booba.com /Jasmy. Token burns. The company does not plan to burn tokens. So that right there, it's like, oh man, some people are kind of down in the dumps about it. Well, there's more about it, right? It says, but organizations that want to access personal data from the personal data locker need to lock up a certain number of Jasmy tokens on the platform, which one is not specified. This mechanism, as the number of client companies grow, will reduce liquidity in the market and accordingly should increase the price of the token. You gotta keep in mind, Jasmy doesn't have trillions of tokens, right? They basically have 50 billion tokens. So, I mean, that's still a lot, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, at least it's not like, you know, Luna Classic, Shiba Inu, and so on. And I don't want people to think I'm like disrespecting those projects. I'm personally invested into those as well, but I'm just throwing that out there. Billions of tokens, trillions and quadrillions is a huge number. And of course, for those particular projects, token burns simply make sense. But why not token burns for Jasmy? That's a great question. Let's jump more into this. So shout out to this organization or guy. I mean, you know, I've been following for a while. Jasmy US states, Jasmy has a burn mechanism built into their smart contract. The burning of Jasmy coin is possible. And of course, we're going to zoom in more in regards to that and see it for yourself. Not exactly the most brightest of a picture. I mean, they could have better lighting, but you can see right here. And it says function _ burn address account, so on and so forth, right? You know, for instance, ERC20 burn from, you know, the 0, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's definitely there. Now, you know, he elaborates, or at least this person does. The question is, from this guy, is the function similar to other coins? Do they have this particular code? Could be false, just a fake code that might not even work. Just saying, not against Jasmy. He's also a holder. So Jasmy US responded, and again, this is like a while ago, right? It says, if you ever watched Hara's AMA, he spoke about being open to the idea of burning coins. However, it was never confirmed nor denied that it will for sure happen. The possibility to burn does indeed exist. And of course, you know, some people have the attitude, you know, well, if it exists, why aren't they doing it? You know? And I want to just state this, all right? I think that there's enough evidence to support this thesis, if you will, that the reason why they don't do this further solidifies that Jasmy is not a pump and dump. And we'll get more into that as well. All right, so I want to show you guys this, and this, of course, was posted on Reddit. You know, we get a lot of our information from both crypto Twitter, Reddit, and so on, right? So this is about a year ago, but, you know, it's still valid. So it says Jasmy and burn. Jasmy does have a burn mechanism in their smart contracts, so they can burn Jasmy. And, of course, there's a discussion about all this. And of course, I want to get into some of this. So I'm just going to get to the key highlights in regards to some of this. So this guy states basically, you know, that fudders scream and shout without any proof and simply cite price action. This guy showed them in reality, like what's going on with some of these pictures. I got to quote all of it, but he says, why would they, as in Jasmy, dump now, especially since they can burn some now and dump later to make billions on a slight pump? And that is a great question. You know, you see other projects, I hate to say that, who do some of those things, right? And it's annoying. And it's more than annoying. It doesn't really show a lot of class, and people get the heck away from it. And of course, they try to justify it. Some projects, let's face it, they're lying out of their yellow teeth, right? But what about Jasmy, right? And that is a good question. So it says you don't have to dig through code. This guy was just trying to post a picture. But he says basically that, brother, we are in agreement. The post was to prove fudders that Jasmy can burn, but they choose not to. Listen to this. This is good stuff. So if anything, you know what? I probably am going to blow this up just a tad bit more, just to make it a little bit easier for you guys to see. Now, there we go. But yeah, I mean, like he says, they choose not to. Despite what? Millions of troll bashing them every day about price action. Let's face it, they do that. I mean, I won't mention, some of you guys criticize even me, saying, hey, stop even giving, some of the fudders anything. I have to recognize what's going on with some of the FUD, because at the end of the day, you do want to see another point of view, but not to the point where I'm going to like name any specific names. But check this out, right? He says that takes strength, courage, belief, and foresight. This comes from a guy by the name of AdNext7833. Okay. And I thought to myself, you know what? This guy has a point. He has a very valid point. How so? Right? So he says if they were interested in dumping, they would burn and then, basically do that on the next mega pump. Right? Some people feel as though, like, what did we see last week? Like 20% up, something like that. Maybe 2 weeks ago, 20%. That's considered pretty significant in recent time with Jasmy. Let's just be honest about that. And of course, like he mentions, after the next mega pump, dump again, or in the last 4 years, they could have burned already. They have a global mission, and he's happy that he found, or he's happy he found the project. Me too, right? And this other guy, he's like, I heard that this is Japan's Bitcoin. Does that mean that if this is like Bitcoin, that they will have a future burn and that will reduce its total supply? I mean, it's a valid question, to say the least, right? So we're going to get more into some of this. And, I like this right here. It says, I'd rather them not burn any tokens. I think the project could succeed without the need of making it deflationary, right? That's a good point as well. But look at this. He said, basically speaking, that, I'm sorry, this guy right here. He says, took me a minute to find it. Here's a video about this specific individual. Sorry, I'm kind of trying to jump back and forth. This individual, I should say, addressed this whole thing, sent a DM to Hara, like way, way back, probably like in 2022, roughly. And you will see in the video here shortly, it's actually from Hara because it's on Twitter, and he asked some of these particular things, right? Like this guy says, it is from this guy named Cryptoverse. He's abandoned his YouTube channel for whatever reason, which is, sad, but, it is a grind, right? So he says he asked Hara about burning, and Hara replies they're not going to burn the tokens, and goes on to explain Jasmy's staking strategy. So I have that video for you. We're going to jump into just that. I'm going to fast forward to that particular spot. So here we go.
A lot of you guys asked if there was going to be any burn or any, way to get rid of the supply. So what Hara said is, let me just refresh it just to show you guys this is legit, right? Because there's a lot of frauds out here, okay? So you guys see here, I said, any plan on burn to reduce supply, I'm going to make a video on it tomorrow, okay? He said, instead of burn, we're taking a program of staking by specific business like cross shareholdings issued by a company, okay? For those of you guys who don't know what staking is, staking basically means that a certain amount of supply or coins, tokens, whatever, has to be locked away, okay? And there's usually some incentives behind this. Obviously, this is good news for us Jasmy holders, as we know that there'll probably be a lot of the supply, the 50 billion that we mentioned earlier in the video, locked away for business use. And I already had a feeling that was the case, but more so, I also want to pop the screenshot on the screen. I said theoretically the value of Jasmy coin, keyword Jasmy coin, so the cryptocurrency, all right, will increase as the amount of platinum data stored in personal data lockers, a key service offered by Jasmy, increases. As the amount of data stored in the PDL increase over time, long-term investors can expect to see significant capital gains. Okay, so based on the good news here is obviously this is old news, right? But this is just to reassure you that there is some good news in terms of holding it long term. Okay, obviously if everything plays out good, right? We don't know what the future holds, but we know that I really believe that the team behind Jasmy, right, high credibility and will most likely execute. Obviously, if they don't execute, Jasmy is gonna not perform as we expect.
So, like you saw in that DM, long-term investors can basically see significant capital gains, excuse me. My thing is this: does this spell, blatant rug pull to you, where this, or I should say, like, this is a classic case of a pump and dump? I don't see that. This outline, in my opinion, I mean, it's not 100% proof that this is not, like, hey guys, I got 100% proof that Jasmy is not a rug pull, but man, I would definitely lean towards that. It's definitely not a classic case of a pump and dump, right? So, they do make the case here. Jasmy years ago could have set this thing up, and they still technically have access to do that, but they don't do that. To me, that shows a lot of class. They're building something solid here for the future. That's just my own personal view. You may, we can agree to disagree if you don't see it that way. I want to jump more into this. And I thought, this was some pretty good stuff, to say the least. This guy responds back to, basically like the video you just saw. He says, exactly, that was my understanding too. Why burn when the world can easily gobble up 50 billion in an instant? True. It says, edit, they still kept the door, which tells me that they're sane enough to think about it rather than jump blindly to a stubborn company line. And at the end of the day, maybe they have the burn mechanism there at their disposal, as a something that maybe they had to burn a little bit, right, for whatever reason. But the thing is this, they haven't. At the end of the day, I mean, we all want, for the most part, I should say all want, a lot of us want to see any particular asset, especially with cryptocurrency, become deflationary, because it leads to the case of, hey, guess what, scarcity and so on. But you gotta also keep in mind that supply doesn't necessarily represent, the full definition of scarcity. You don't believe me, you look more into it. Right? There's other factors when it comes to scarcity, right? I mean, of course, most people are going to look at supply as, if there's not much of a supply, that's one of the leading factors. And I agree with you on that. I don't want to get in too big of a debate in regards to that. But what about this whole thing in regards, again, to Jasmy, right? So, I like what was posted here, and I thought for the most part it was pretty good stuff. I think there's maybe a couple more things down here, but maybe that was about it. I will jump to the next part of what we have. Yeah, it's just showing, like, in regards to the Ethereum address and how you can verify it and so on. I want to now jump into the tokenomics. And of course, for some of you guys, maybe you're disappointed about, hey, there's not massive token burns and so on. You got to keep in mind, I mean, there's some people that own like millions of these things, right? My own personal goals, I would like to get to 1 million Jasmy. I'm not there yet, I have reached some of my other goals of getting at least 100,000. I have, for instance, have over double that amount, right? Some of you guys have, I've seen the comments, have millions of these, but whatever the case be, it's not as the saying goes, a you-know-what pissing contest. I hate to use that expression. What it's about is, how long are you willing to hold the asset to reach particular goals? Where do you see Jasmy reaching these particular goals in the future, right? That's where it's at. So with that said, let's jump into the tokenomics here briefly. And this actually does come from CoinGecko, ironically. By the way, Jasmy's at 0.00740. Not too shabby, right? But let's take a look into this. So Jasmy tokenomics. What is the allocation for Jasmy coin? A great question. As you can see here, they have this allocation. 5.0%. incentives, 20% to contributors and communities. Ecosystem represents 48%. Now, of course, understand why that's so significant. In the past, we reported on the whole concept of Jasmy's grant program and what they're willing to put up for those grants. They understand that all they need is to have a few great projects to build their ecosystem, a couple great ones to shine, if you will, right? I always use this example. Cardano, right? ADA, you have, for instance, Ajax, Singularity Net. We've been covering Singularity Net since before last summer 2022, since it was like 4 cents. I think really blasted off. Last I saw, when it went up to like the new all-time highs, I believe it was like even as high as 60 cents. Could be mistaken, but I saw it in the 45-cent range. But again, that's a perfect example of a standout quality project on their ecosystem. All Jasmy needs is something like that. Boom. Right? This thing goes, forget about it, right? Anyway, check out what it says here. Funds and institutional investors. We're going to get into that as well. 27% would go to that. Now, I want to state this. We, of course, have reported on the whole rumor of what? The concept of a fourth quarter 2023 lockup. Now, some of you guys have stated it's not going to be all locked up all at once. It's going to take a duration or time going into, like, for instance, 2024, 2025. We don't know. We don't have those answers yet. I've looked more into it. I don't have those answers yet either. I'm sure in the next AMA, hopefully, one of us can ask Hara some of these hard questions, right? Because they do need to get answered. So, as you can see here, the token distribution of Jasmy coin is as follows. 48% is allocated to the ecosystem. We saw that on what you saw right here with the blue. 27% allocated to funds and institutional investors. 20% is allocated to contributors and communities. 5% is allocated to incentive. Now it says, what is the supply schedule for Jasmy coin? That's a great question. But look at how it's broken down. You have, for instance, this slight green area for the incentives and so on. But look at the dates in regards to some of this, right? So we are currently, as you guys know, now in May of 2023. And you can see how this is going all the way out to 2025, right? It's quite the outlook, to say the least. And, you can, of course, go back to this and use this as well. But, 27% to funds institutional investors. The reason why I want to point that out so much is, again, that's part of that lockup. So, they have mentioned, and you're going to see this here in a bit, that they have these plans in regards to a certain amount of organizations which need to put so much of this, I guess you could say, away for that lockup. And keep in mind this, you have to have a decent amount of organizations for that lockup. So some of their goals I've seen in the past, I think it was something like, 70 particular firms and so on. Depending on the size of those firms and depending on the, the size of the, or how many, tokens and coins they got, you start adding that up, that ends up being quite the bit, or quite a big amount of lockup. At the end of the day, if we're talking about like things like XRP and so on, that institutional money coming in, that's where the big money is, right? We're all talking about, regulatory clarity for we can have financial institutions coming in. Jasmy, being in Japan, you already got a lot of that clarity to begin with. They're already taking things to the next step, while the United States is not even clearly at clarity at all, right? So my thing is this: when you hear people say, with this lockup by the end of the year, wow, watch out for Jasmy, are we too far off? I don't think so. So it says the initial token launch date for Jasmy was, of course, the 1st of October 2021. The maximum supply of this token is capped at 50 billion. And of course, we verify that. You can verify that both on CoinGecko, CMC, other outlets, right? The supply of Jasmy is expected to be fully vested by, listen to this, guys, I don't know if you knew this, January 31st of 2025. So I thought that was interesting. And if anything, I thought I would share that with you guys. There were some big things basically mentioned, of course, in that DM from Hara. But in closing, I just want to state this. We did get verification. I did look all over the place in regards to more information. If they ever burned any Jasmy and so on, that is not the case. So while on one side, I want to feel like, man, there's not going to be any burns, kind of bummed out about it and so on. When you see more of the explanation, especially on Reddit, kind of makes you feel good to a sense. It's like, you know what? These guys could have done a classic pump and dump, but that isn't the case. That isn't the case at all. And with these lockups coming up in the future, man, oh man, maybe that will be even that much more significant compared to any particular token burn you've seen in any project. Think about that for a moment. And I have, of course, seen plenty of token burns, whether it's for Luna Classic, Shiba Inu, you name it, when it comes to the project. At the end of the day, if we're all trying to create one specific thing, and that is more supply and demand for the particular digital asset, at the end of the day, it all needs to make sense. Does this do these tokenomics make sense for Jasmy? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your perspective on some of the token distribution, tokenomics, or if you're just like, man, they should have a burn. I want to hear it all. You may be right, I may be wrong, but the point is, we did look more into it. So there you guys have it. That was the breakdown, a little short breakdown, not too big of a deep dive in regards to burns and a little bit in regards to the tokenomics. So like, comment, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Check out our daily live show every single day of the week at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Thank you again for joining us for this edition of Jasmy on behalf of Crypto Talk Now. Have a blessed day, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.